Most people say that you don't have to mix business and friends or family. Do you feel that when you work with your friend, it kind of reflects or it kind of changes the way you behave before having the business and after having a business?
It does change the way you talk and interact with each other. Now, even when we're hanging out as friends, like I'm at his house, having dinner or something like that, most of the conversation veers back to what's going on in the business. But I think that both of us enjoy business so much that it doesn't phase us anymore. It's just kind of what we talk about nowadays rather than talking about golf and all the random stuff we used to talk about,
Okay.
right?
And when you are starting out, you have these big players in your town and in your cities that are there, and you have to compete against them. So how did you compete against all these players or all these roofers who have been into business like a decade or 2 decades or even 3 decades or even 50 years?
What we do is specifically write down a list. I got this from Alex Ramosi, if you know who that is. We
Yes.
write down a list of every single problem that the customer can have in the roofing process, every situation, every little thing, as far as like the crew having their tools spread across the yard instead of in one nice little spot in the yard, because people don't like to come home when their roofs get installed and the tools be spread everywhere. Everything, we wrote them all down, and then we were saying, okay, how do we attack each one of these so that this customer experience can just be unbelievable?
So what are the top 3 things that you feel someone should avoid that where you messed up, and you would advise them that these are the things you should not do when you are getting into roofing?
One of the first things is to lengthen your time horizon, hopping in, at least for ownership. So if you want to be an owner, but you also want to make, a lot of money for yourself and your family in the next 2-3 years, and have a lot of money liquid and go on vacations and stuff like that, it's not really realistic. It's not a heavy cash flow game at the very beginning. You're not super liquid at the very beginning.
And every industry have their own support system, I would say. And in roofing, we have these conferences, we have these expos, we have all these things and seminars. Everyone is kind of doing that. And I think you are the best person to ask this question. Like, how do you see the support system in this roofing industry?
It's not an abundance mindset if you're trying to tear other people down. I do understand that there's some bad apples in the industry, but when you talk to some people, it's kind of tense sometimes, and it's just funny, like why I never understood why you'd be tense with each other, because if you look at parallel industries like solar, for instance, those guys are always collaborating, and they do large collaborations, and they're always together, and they're on trips with each other from different companies and stuff. And it's funny, it's not like that in the roofing industry for whatever reason. Everyone thinks they do it the right way, and other people do it the wrong way.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the Roofing Millionaires podcast, the only roofing podcast where we don't promote anyone and we don't sell you anything. In this episode, we are sitting down with Dylan Faircloth from Ember Roofing in Texas, and Dylan shares how, alongside with his friend, they started a roofing company that is kind of becoming a local brand now. This episode has a lot of value for people who are in their 20s and 30s, or who are either working at another roofing company and now they are looking to start their own roofing business, because it covers how you can show up against the big competitors and how you can build a local brand by almost solving every single problem that homeowners have in your local area. Plus, we also discussed how the support system in the roofing industry can be improved overall to create a community that helps the next generation of roofers scale their roofing businesses fast. Do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want us to feature more young roofing entrepreneurs like Dylan on the show, so you can learn about the challenges that they face in their initial phases and how you can become a value to them. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Roofing Millionaires podcast, Dylan. It's great to have you here. So, how's the weather in Texas, and what has been your schedule so far? Because I heard that you are having hail and storms and all that stuff.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy here in Dallas Fort Worth. We get crazy weather all the time. So it's always, as a roofing company of many here in Dallas Fort Worth, it's always hectic. There's always storms going on. So something to keep you busy for sure.
So, would you mind sharing your story? like I know that you are co-founder of Ember Roofing, and you started it with your friend. So how did it all begin? Like, how did you meet your co-founder, and how did you guys think to thought to start your roofing company, and where are you right now?
Yeah, so we are actually we were college baseball teammates, me and my partner
Hmm.
Justin. So we met. We were the first people to meet on the team. Kind of just became, stuck together like glue. We were bus buddies, that whole thing. So we were pretty good friends. And then I moved on. I actually went to Southern New Hampshire University, finished my baseball career there, got a finance
Hmm.
degree, and then he moved on. He had a little girl, bounced around a little bit, and then he eventually landed in the roofing industry. And then I graduated during COVID. I graduated college, so I was trying to make the transition from college to a career during COVID, and it was tough. And then I was coming and visiting all the time up here in Dallas Fort Worth. I'm from Houston, Texas, so I was coming up and visiting all the time, hanging out with him, and he was always in my ear telling me I gotta get in the industry. I gotta get in the industry. So eventually,
Hmm.
after a few times, he finally got me. So me and him worked for a company here in Dallas Fort Worth, and then became a couple of their top producers, and then eventually uh, broke off and started Ember Roofing. I think we started February 9th of last year, so we just finished our first year in business.
Awesome. And I am actually excited to have you on the show here, because most roofers who have been on the show, they have been in the industry for like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or even 4 decades. But you are someone who is fresh, and you are someone who can share a lot of what you feel that could have been better in the industry. So I just want to ask you, like, you met Justin, and you start he asked you to be the co-owner of the company. You could have been doing any job as well. So why didn't you decide that? Like, why did you end up in roofing and not choose the other path? Like most of the guys nowadays, they decide to have a job first, and then decide to have their own business. But you guys, you just started your own business straight away. Why not the other path?
Yeah, we hopped right into it. I mean, we were just, project managers, your typical project managers turned company owners, broke off and turned company owners. I think at least from my perspective,
Hmm.
as soon as I finished college, I knew I wanted to own my own company. I just didn't know what company I wanted to be, and truly I wasn't really that biased, so I just knew I
Hmm.
wanted to own something. So only after a little while of being project managers, I started putting the pieces together and started to make a lot of sense in my head what was going on behind the scenes as far as material. All the finance side, of course, was rattle around in my head all the time. And
Hmm.
eventually, I came to him and I was like, "Man, we can do this. There's not that many pieces to this puzzle, so we can do this." So eventually, we finally got the nerve to take the jump and do it on our own. I don't know. I was bound to be a company owner for sure.
Hmm.
And roofing was just what I knew the most of, so I made the leap into roofing, and now I thoroughly enjoy roofing. Kind of worked out.
uh, it's actually great, and it aligns with me as well, because I started the same way as you. When I graduated, I knew that even if I do job for one day, I would kill myself instead of doing a job. And that's just me, because I know I have to own my business. However, there were some of my friends who told me that you have to gain some experience, or you have to work a job or two before running your own business. So you have that approach, and you have that mindset to run a business. But you guys started the same way as well. And as far as I know, I have seen your reviews, I have seen the work you are doing. Like, you are doing quite good so far. What do you think about that? Like, do you feel that is it necessary to have some kind of experience, or something, or is it just solely based on your mindset that you have to run your business, and even if you have the experience or not, it's just inside of you?
I think the few years that I spent at another roofing company
Hmm.
were I think that at the past, at least in this industry, I think that they're required. And the only reason I say that is because I had some phenomenal guys that were around me that sort of
Hmm.
trained me and showed me the ropes. Some of them were those guys that had been doing it for 37 years and owned his own
Hmm.
company for 15, 20 years. And so
Hmm.
without having their expertise to lean on in the first couple years and them to kind of guide you in the right direction, I feel like the stumble out of the gates would have been that much harder, in my opinion. Of course, that's the path I took, so I'm most familiar with that path. But I really can't imagine some of the ins, learning some of the ins and outs and some of the really nuanced stuff that comes with this job without having
Mm.
a few years surrounded by people who talk about the industry constantly. So I, at least my opinion, I think the first couple years you spend with a good quality company with quality people in that company, and it'll really slingshot you forward to either stay in that company or do your own thing, either one, for sure.
Okay. So how did you guys define your roles and responsibilities in the company? And what was the process you went through in order to define that you would be doing this and Justin would be doing that?
Yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
had a lot of meetings about it, a lot of
Mm,
meetings. So we sat
mm,
for probably a good five months or so,
mm,
just doing constant work on I let him take the things that he's really good at. He's a great sales guy. He was the top performer in the company the last year we were there, our last
mm,
company. Phenomenal sales guy. And of course, I have a finance degree, so I understand a lot of the back end business stuff. And I grew up in the construction industry. My dad is in the pipeline maintenance industry, so I grew up around construction my whole life. So that's how we kind of set those boundaries. So I handle most of the finance and a lot of the production,
mm,
and he handles a lot of the majority portion of the marketing and the selling and whatnot. He also grew up in the town we're based out of, so he has a lot of connections in this town. I
mm.
just don't have, but I do have the construction background to kind of even it out. So we make a pretty good team in that sense. Is we both come from different backgrounds and
Mm.
kind of mold with each other. Both of us can sell too, so that's always
Great.
advantageous to have out of company owners. I feel like.
Okay. And it's actually quite cool. And yet, I have something in mind that most people say that you don't have to mix business and friends or family. Like, don't do business with friends and family. And what I personally feel is that you can't win alone. And if you have someone whom you can trust or with whom you can do business, with whom you have already spent 4 or 5 or 10 years, it's much better to have them in your team or to work with them instead of working with someone who is totally stranger to you. So do you feel that when you work with your friend, it kind of reflects or it kind of changes the way you behave before having the business and after having a business together?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does affect it. It's impossible not to affect it, right? I mean,
Uh,
Justin and I, we've been through. I mean, we've only been through 1 year. So, but I mean, the first year it was, I mean, it felt like everything was moving a million miles an hour. So we had to be on the same page with a lot of stuff. Sometimes we
uh,
had to make decisions on our own and then inform Milo when we made the decision. But a lot of
uh,
times we were really good about having the protocol to come talk to each other before we make decisions. So it does change the way you talk and interact with each other now. Even when we're hanging out as friends, like I'm at his house,
uh,
uh, having dinner or something like that, most of the conversation veers back to what's going on in the business. But I think that both of us enjoy business so much that it doesn't phase us anymore. It's just kind of what we
uh,
talk about nowadays rather than talking about golf and all the random stuff we used to talk about, right? So, and then me and him have agree on a lot of things like the plan for the business, how
uh,
business should be done in general. So I feel like we heard a lot of warnings of not mixing friends with business before we started it.
uh,
So that was definitely a concern for us to get on the same
uh,
page before we ever decided to actually make the move.
uh,
But I feel like the more you can find someone who has the same idea of where you want the business to go, not
uh,
necessarily how it should operate right now today, but as
uh,
long as you're on the same page for sure on how to get to the end goal, I feel
uh.
like that having that vision be the same in both people's minds
uh.
kind of fixes the problems on the front end, in my opinion.
I agree
So
with
that's
you.
kind of how we navigate. Sorry.
And I feel that a lot of it depends on ego as well. Like when I started, I had my college friends as well, and I decided to have them in my business too, and we aligned on so many stuff. But later down the road, like after 5 or 6 months, I realized that my decision was solely based on emotions. But since day one, I told them that this is business and this is our relationship. It will never ever merge. I can straight away tell you that I am doing wrong, you are doing wrong here, and you can straight away tell me that I am doing wrong here, but it will never ever affect our relationship. And after 6 months, we sat down and I told them that it's not working anymore because I just made an emotional decisions. You guys don't have the skills yet that were needed to that were like that were the base level skills for these roles that you are doing, and that's where I feel we are lagging. And those guys, my best friends, they didn't like hesitate at all. Like they just said that okay, I'm still sitting down with them, I'm still having all these conversations, and we are working on another business now because I feel that they have their expertise in that specific area, and we should have been working in those businesses. And I feel that a lot of it comes down to ego as well. Like even if you start a business and it doesn't go well, you can just tell your friend or family or your brother that it's not going the way that we wanted it to go. So let's just part ways and maybe we can align on something else in the future.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you have to have a type of relationship where you can openly come to them and say like, "Hey, this is not you're not doing well enough and, this is not up to the standard we're trying to hold in this area or this is not up to the standard. This is not." Sometimes you even have to come to them and say, "You're not performing like I know you can. You're not performing how you know you can." Do you know what I mean? You're not working as hard as you know you can. Sometimes it's even that conversation, which is a weird one to have with someone who's been your friend your whole life. But it's now your business partner. But you just have to have those conversations before you have to nip them in the butt. I think before that they grow into anything really, because we had that conversation too. A few of them before we started, like, hey, if something's bothering us, we bring it to each other. We don't let it sit and linger because that's how long-term problems are from. When you let them sit for a few months and you don't say anything and then they're still not fixing it because you don't know, they don't know to fix it. So one of our systems and processes is to come to each other as soon as something's bothering us with a dynamic rather than letting it kind of steam sit and marinate. So I feel like we do a good job of that, and neither one of us really hold it against each other. We can have a tough conversation and then go eat lunch and then go hop on a few roofs together. It doesn't really affect our relationship very much, which I'm so thankful for. I'm thankful he's as level headed as he is. He really calms me down, and when I get stressed about whatever's going on in the business, and then I feel like I do the same for him, give him a little confidence whenever some stuff might not be going right on that side of the business. I'm certainly lucky to have that sort of dynamic with him for sure.
And I hope this interview becomes one of the first interview that you guys watch 10 or 20 years later and you feel that, okay, we started from here. Now, I want to ask you, how do you guys handle the conflicts? Like you have been into business 1 year and there are at times in roofing when you two are doing great stuff, but the crew that you have on roofs, they mess up some things and now you have to cover up for them. So how do you handle all these things? Like you are in your first year and these things are totally out of your expectations. So what were the processes or your approach towards all these things?
So our main focus
Hmm.
and the real vision we try to build at Ember Roofing is client experience, and not just a basic client experience. We like to really focus on the client process, like the systems and processes. How are they going to, from when they first meet you, what is their experience all the way through until the job's closed out and you send them a closeout email, all the way down to what's in the closeout email, that will make them pass along to their friends. So when something does go wrong in this industry, it's inevitable, right? Something always goes wrong. Essentially, our first reaction is to do what will make the customer still want to pass this off to their friends and family. So that's the approach that we take. Anytime
Hmm.
anything goes wrong, of
Hmm.
course it'll cost us some money here and there, but ultimately we feel like the more we can protect the client experience, the
Hmm.
happier they'll be to still pass us off, even if things this went wrong or that went wrong or some sort of communication lapse there.
Hmm.
We go the extra step to make sure that they still think highly of us even when it's done, even though we messed up or even though something went wrong in the process. So that's kind of our first reaction, and then we
Hmm.
rock with that all the way through.
And do you have any kind of experience in this past year that made you really like concerned about things and it was really difficult for you to handle that?
As far as something that went wrong on the jobs,
Hmm.
uh you know, whew, I'm gonna knock on wood with this, but not. I had some last year was a I didn't have any of some of the big problems that I've experienced before when I was just a project manager, or I've heard about
Yeah.
people experiencing. Last year, I don't know if it's because we have a production manager sit on each
Yeah.
job, and they sit there
Yeah.
through the whole job from start to finish.
Yeah.
And right now it's super convenient for us because there's only really there's not a lot of us yet
Yeah.
because we're only a company that's a year old. So we can even have the
Yes.
production manager so that he stays busy and on top of things. Sometimes he even
Yeah.
goes and sits with the gutter guys when they're doing gutters,
Yeah.
which you don't get out of a lot of companies. So I feel like it really mediates everything that kind of can go wrong whenever you have eyes watching
Yeah.
specifically for something to go wrong throughout the whole thing. So kind of they say the smaller companies are more flexible and can move a little quicker.
Yeah.
That's what we're using to our advantage right now. So
Yeah.
sometimes we have a production manager sitting with the gutter guys just to make sure that gutters goes on correctly. And I feel like it's just it's advantageous to us to use that to our advantage while we're small. I'm sure some things will change. Right now we're small, and so we take extra care of everything that we do right now.
Yeah, that's a great thing. And that would help you in building a customer base that actually recommends you everywhere. And that would be beneficial for you. You are a finance expert, Dylan. I want to ask you, like, what are the things you feel that a roofing company should do? Or let's just say if someone is trying to get into roofing as well, what are the things they should do in order to get their finances in order?
Well, cash flow is king in this industry for sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the most advantageous things that we do is
Yeah.
which is I think is common across the industry is you have to get obviously credit with the
Yeah.
suppliers, but then we pay down our supply balance with a credit card. So that may seem like a small thing, but let's say we work up a big balance at the supplier, just a
Yeah.
monthly balance from whatever roofs we did that week. You're on net 30 with ABC or SRS or whoever you're using, and then you pay with a credit card, so you get another 30 days to worry about that payment. Essentially, you're buying yourself 60 days to get we do mostly insurance restoration. So essentially you're buying yourself 60 days to get that money on the back end from the insurance company or from the homeowner
Yeah.
um to help cash flow. So that's one of the biggest things. Also, we take some sort of deposit on the day of the install. So that's a big thing in our opinion too. We've done it a few times where we were
Yeah.
doing roofs for close friends and whatnot, and they hadn't received their money from the insurance yet, but we went ahead and installed. And then all of a sudden they had a hiccup getting their payment in, getting their payment in. So we were stuck, footing the bill for the crew or
Yeah.
any sort of thing without receiving any payment yet.
Yeah.
You can really get behind the eight ball if you do that one too many times for sure.
Okay. And what if I have to start my roofing company and I don't know like anything? I have worked with a roofing company as a roofer, let's just say, but I don't know about company registration and what are the documentations that you need to have in order to run or register your own company. So what's the step-by-step approach for someone who has to start their own roofing company? Like what should they go through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is one of the advantages I think I bring is
Yeah.
to this conversation is that I don't
Yeah.
have, 30 years of roofing knowledge.
Yeah.
But I did just get through year one of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. So
Yeah.
all of this stuff is fresh on my mind. So
Yeah.
of course, filing an LLC and things like that is super important. I would recommend filing with a lawyer instead of on Rocket Lawyer or something like that, so that
Yeah.
they can really run you through the details. If this is something you're thinking about doing, also getting a CRM,
Yeah.
some sort of a couple CRMs. So definitely a
Yeah.
roofing one, and then like a company cam or something to keep your pictures in order.
Yeah.
Just helps you stay the more organized you can stay, the better off you'll be, especially in year one, because the organization gets out of hand in a hurry whenever you're handling everything from initial inspections to billing on the back end. Organization is king, and so the CRM really helps for that. And also, what we did is I have a finance degree. I thought I could handle the bookkeeping without any
Yeah.
sort of problems very quickly. At least I was educated enough to know that I couldn't. So what I
Okay.
did was outsource bookkeeping. Almost
Yeah.
in one of our first months, I outsourced bookkeeping
Yeah.
so that we could have accurate books whenever we check the books in month 6 and month 8 and that sort of thing. So I think that was super advantageous to have somebody to make extra
Yeah.
sure our books would be in line so that I could financial decisions with clean books.
Okay. You just said that right after a few months you realized that books would be a difficult task for you. And I agree with you. Like what I feel from that is that most of the times the knowledge that we have or the knowledge that the colleges that provide us, we feel that we can implement it everywhere or we have learned everything, but that when we step into the real world, that is just totally a waste of everything, I would say, because that just does not work. So how, like, where, what's the difference that you felt after getting out from college and when you started the practical work? Like what are the things that they taught you and you felt that the real world is totally opposite of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things is once you get into a real career
Hmm.
or a real industry, that industry is full of industry nuances that just aren't common in people's everyday life without it. What I'm trying to say is roofing and a roofing company has so many things on the financial side that you just wouldn't expect without being in it. So I think in that sort of situation, experience is reigns supreme. As if you don't have experience trying to cash flow, you know, more money than you've ever dealt with before on a
Hmm.
construction job, you're not going to gain. There's no
Hmm.
school that's going to teach that until
Hmm.
it kind of happens to you, and you have to figure it out on your own. There were certain months last year when we had way bigger of a material bill than we had cash in the bank, and so you're kind of
Okay.
staring at it like, oh God, like what do we do? Like we need to pick
Hmm.
up checks to keep this thing alive. And so there's no school that's going to teach you like that sort of feeling whenever until it happens to you. You can know what to do and what to pay, but as soon as those sort of that sort of stress and that those sort of emotions hit, it
Hmm.
becomes a different ball game. So I think that's why I think experience reigns supreme. Although I did have good fundamentals and
Hmm.
I know I understood not to spend money on
Hmm.
this and this and this, but there's I think experience definitely reigns supreme in that area. But I guess your answer is every industry
Hmm.
has such intricate nuances that
Hmm.
just the general knowledge of school is not going to be able to really illustrate for you until you jump into
Hmm.
the industry with both feet.
Okay. And when you are starting out, you have these big players in your town and in your cities that are there, and you have to compete against them. So how did you compete against all these players or all these roofers who have been into business like a decade or 2 decade or even 3 decade or even 50 years?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big focus of ours for the first 2 months or the first, couple months is how do we set ourselves apart because there are Dallas Fort Worth is I like to say is the nation's capital for roofing and for roofing companies. So there's
Uh,
some great ones out there. There's some giant ones. And really more than that, there's some moderate sized ones that really operate well, and there's a bunch of them because we
uh,
get the weather we do. So really, what we did to kind of combat that is really use our size to our advantage, like I was saying earlier. So we
uh,
have the ability to we niche down as hard as we can. So
uh,
we are setting this niche in place as early as we can year one so that in 15 and 20 years, it will really own the niche is our goal.
uh,
So the niche that we go to is really higher end residential homes. So we like to higher end asphalt homes, sometimes the asphalt when they're trying to switch from asphalt to specialty roofs. That's kind of the neighborhoods that we like to stay in the most. So what we do is specifically write down a list. I got this from Alex Ramosi, if you know who that is. We
yes.
write down a list of every single problem that the customer can have
Uh,
in the roofing process, every situation, every little thing as far as like the crew having their tools spread across the yard instead of in one
uh,
nice little spot in the yard because people don't like to come home when their roofs get installed and the tools be spread everywhere.
uh,
Everything. We wrote them all down and then we were saying, okay, how do we attack each one of these so that this customer experience can just be unbelievable? And we're like, what happened to us in the past that customers have problems with? Well, one of those things when you're dealing with insurance is it takes forever. And
uh,
so sometimes it can take, months. And so a lot of that process though is just kind of sitting and waiting on the insurance company, whatever insurance company it was. Our customers are kind of sitting there and then after a couple of weeks they're like reaching out to us like, hey, am I supposed to be doing something? Like, and we're like, no, we're working on it, just give us a little bit. So we attack that by just giving weekly updates. Every Monday morning, we have an office admin update them on the status of their job, what's going on, what to expect from
uh,
them, and if they should be doing anything or not. And so something that small, we're just certainly going to implement that when we get bigger, just because it's made such an impact. But
Mhm.
at any point, the homeowner really doesn't have to wonder what's happening, or where they're at in the process, or what's going on, or what they should be expecting, who's going to reach out to them next, because we've already told them. Small stuff such as we have our crew put their tools in a little designated area of the yard. We bought them a trash can.
Mhm.
And sometimes the crews have, like, when they have lunch, they'll have personal trash that
Mhm.
doesn't get all the way up into the trailer until the end of the
Mhm.
day. So we bought them a trash can to sit right in the middle of where they put all their stuff, so that's not a problem anymore. We just have them put their personal trash like Coke cans and that sort of stuff, put it in the trash can. So we really, wrote down all the problems that could occur during a roofing
Mhm.
project, and then attacked each one that was reasonable, that we could attack, all focused on client experience and communication.
That's a perfect approach, I would say. And I have read both books by Alex Hormozy, and I agree with you. And one thing he says is that you have to provide people like the perceived outcome as quick as you can. And what I feel is that these big players, they have their own problems, like they have to scale, they have to handle this, they have to handle that. But there are things for sure that they are missing, and those things guys like us, like who are starting out, they can pick and they can deliver to the homeowners as in a shorter time frame to win instead of being the cheapest quote. What do you say about that? Like there are two approaches. You can either be the cheapest bid and you can win the project, or you can use your dedication like you are doing and your customer experience and the value you are providing, even if you are new, and you can leverage that.
Right, right. And the way we treat that is the quote's only as expensive as the value you're getting, is kind of how we stand with that. So if
Yeah.
I were to charge, we're typically never the cheapest quote, just because of the type of customer that we really target. I mean, we use
Yeah.
the catch-alls, we do weekly updates, production manager. I mean, we really are trying to lay the foundation to be a
Yeah.
full service, luxury roofing company, is what we like to joke of, and around with each other. We even have taken certain aspects, like we'll look into companies like Porsche and those sort of companies, and see, like, okay, how is their website set up? How are they doing this? How are they doing this? So to be one of those companies, obviously we're not aiming at the customers that are looking for the cheapest quote out there. We aim for the other end, that's looking for true peace of mind, which I understand sounds funny coming out of a 1 year roofing company, but what we're
Yeah.
trying to do is really lay the foundation so that in year
Yeah.
5 we can be that for these customers. And then, like you're saying, that the competition can offer, we have some big players here in Dallas Fort Worth, some great companies offering phenomenal warranties and doing this and that for their customers. So how are we going to win these customers and these big homes that really care about their home and really care about it? Well, we cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's, and give a different level of service, right? We give a different client experience. We give them weekly updates. I'm sure that's left up to the salesman most of the time. So we give them weekly updates. We do this and this and this to try to really set ourselves apart. But in that comes almost never being the cheapest quote, which we're fine with.
And I feel that you are being quite humble here because you say that you can't say much because you have 1 year of experience. However, I feel that you are doing a lot of good stuff out there because I have seen some of your work on Instagram, on Facebook, and they're actually quite good projects. Let's just talk about some personal stuff now. Like you are definitely making a quite handsome amount from last year, I would say, being 1 year into roofing. How does life feel now? Like, what has changed in your life after getting into business?
I was really hoping to get on this subject, actually, because this
Mm,
this I give a lot of thought to this
mm,
subject, because in Dallas Fort Worth, when you're a regular, roofing salesman, or when you're a top performing salesman, it's easy to have a lot of money liquid, right?
mm,
I mean, it's a pretty lucrative career,
mm,
especially if you kind of learn the ropes and figure out what you're doing. It's a pretty lucrative career, and you have a lot of money at your disposal. Some people will frown on this, but January, you're not having to go out and knock when it's 30 degrees outside, and ice and rain and stuff like that. Whenever you've really performed during the years. That was what I was used to, and then when we got in business, we weren't. We it was different. The funniest thing is you're always warned, especially if you consume any content. You're always warned about all the hardships that are going to come whenever you open your own company, and most of them came, and most of them hit you in the face, to be honest. So, but when you're warned about them, you're prepared, and when it happens, it's just the realization that just happened to you. So, like, if you have start having like a lot of cash flow problems, then you know you were to expect cash flow problems in the roofing industry because you were warned, by a bunch of people before. The one warning that I didn't it didn't sync with me or that I missed is that you start working these 100-hour weeks and then you do them for 6 months, and the first 6 months is I mean, it's you're still in the first 6 months, so it's still like new to you, and you're still, it's still like fun. You're still open your own business, but then you get down to month like 11, and you still don't have all that money liquid, and you're still working 90, 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, and you're like, man, if I was just a salesman, I would have, I'd learned so many skills this year that I would be like 3 times ahead of when I
Uh,
was just a regular project manager. Now that I've opened my company, I've stacked the skills. Um,
uh,
but you're still not collecting, you're still not super liquid. It's just this funny little dynamic where you're like, man, I'm way
uh,
better than I was, I'm working way harder than I was, and
uh,
there's still like, and I'm
uh,
making way less than I was, and I have almost no liquid. So it's a funny little dynamic that I guess I didn't, I'd heard people say it, but it never really sunk, or I wasn't warned about it. But it certainly hits you every day when you're working another 11, 12 hour day, and you're still not, your company's collecting the money, but you're not.
Okay, and that's something that I wanted to touch as well. Like when you started, most guys, was your goal, was your aim money or purpose? And if it was purpose, then how are you achieving that? Like, what do you want to achieve in the bigger picture?
You know, I I do a lot of thinking about this because
Uh,
it really is what gets you out of bed in the morning, and that, because like I said, when you're in month 11 and you haven't, money is really not a thing to you
uh,
personally yet. It takes finding something to get you up and not quit and run and run back to another roofing company as just a salesman,
uh,
because you now understand what's capable there, that you kind of expanded your mind on what's capable there rather than when you when you were there. But I think one of my biggest purposes is, and what really drives me going, the vision that plays in my head every day, is just having waking up every day and coming to a company that just operates just as close to perfect as you can get. Of course, no one will ever build the perfect one, but coming to a company where every no customer is having a bad experience because
uh,
communication is so good. This department's
uh,
communicating to this department flawlessly,
uh, uh,
that sort of thing. That vision is really what gets me up and going, because you realize quickly, at
uh,
least in year one, you realize quickly like why having departments is so advantageous and why the big companies do it. Having a legal department, having an accounting department, talks to
uh,
your marketing department. You know what I mean? So
uh,
all of those become so clear so quickly of why large companies have all of those different departments, and
uh,
also hiring super skilled individuals to run those departments. So I think that vision is really what gets me up and going, because every day I go and work my 10, 12 hours on really putting my foot on the ground, then it gets me
uh,
an inch closer to building the perfect business that I get to go in. Essentially, once I haven't been there yet, but I imagine once business becomes just a game where you're kind of
uh,
trying different things and you have split tests running, and you have the ability to kind of calm down and test this out to see if it worked. I feel like
uh,
that's paradise as far as entrepreneurship goes, because that's when business becomes really fun, when it starts to be like a game instead of livelihood.
Great. You are putting 100 hours a week right now, but I might be wrong here. Correct me if I'm wrong. That I feel that you don't have a family yet. Like you don't have kids and you haven't become a parent yet. When you become a parent, I feel is that you have more responsibilities and you have to give time and like energy to your family too. And there are other things related to that as well. So at that time, you can't give 100 hours week every single week, 100 hours to your work every single week. So what plans do you have for your company in the next year or two to build these systems and to have some things on automations so you and Justin can focus more on the scaling part and on the leadership part, and you don't have these 100 hours week frequent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. We're certainly a systems and operations company for sure. Even right out the gate, we implement with production, talking to the office, we implement as many systems and as many processes as we can, get as many things down as in some sort of structured, system to handle each problem. So the faster we can get all of those systems and processes set into place. So for instance, one of our plans right now is to kind of stay small until we can get all of that stuff in place. And then so that when we start feeding people into the company, or when we start really recruiting heavy and starting really trying to scale and grow the company, that systems and processes will be in place for everyone that we plan on bringing in. So we don't have to start from scratch on training whoever the new person that we bring in is. So one of our methods right now that we're using is legitimately to stay small on purpose so that we can build the things on the back end, so that when you kind of put it into motion, of course, things never really end up like the plan, but once you put it in motion, you'll have a foundation of systems and processes to kind of let them loose on the incoming on the.
Do you read books?
I read a lot of books actually.
Okay. Have you read Principles by Ray Dalio?
Principles?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Read that one, and that's my recommendation too. That would help you a lot in
Nice.
decision making, in leadership, in defining your core values, in defining the decision making processes for your company, and it would give you a base on which you can develop your systems and SOPs in the future. That's a great book.
Nice.
My,
I will.
my next question to you is, how would you define your first year in business? Like, was it a smooth and silky road, or was it a bumpy ride?
Anyone who says it's a smooth road, I feel like wasn't trying hard enough, or they're lying.
Yeah.
One of the two. No, I mean we had a little recap, and it feels like everything's happening at 1 gajillion miles an hour in your first
Yeah.
year. Like jobs are happening so fast,
Uh,
problems are happening so fast. Every day is full
uh,
of fires to put out. That's normal stuff, though. That's just being alive in your first year in business, in my opinion, at least in this industry. So, but I feel like the rate at which you learn switches from whenever you're an employee to whenever you're a business owner. The rate at which you learn new things multiplies by 10, because you have to learn new things because to keep your business alive. So the rate at which you learn them is just, you reach new levels that you never really thought that you could learn things this quickly before, and implement them that quickly. So that's one of the best things that came out of our first year, is that I realized, for one, you really open your mind to how hard you can work,
uh,
and how you were really capable of working that hard, and you just kind of didn't understand it until you got into it. The second thing is you have to learn things so quickly to stay alive, to keep your business thriving. So anything, small things like how back ends of the CRM works, you're kind of uncovered to that whenever you own it, instead of being a project manager. You learn how the back end of CRM works, and then you have to make decisions on how you're going to set the back end up. And so you have to learn what part of the CRM corresponds to the other part. And so I think that was one of the most advantageous of year one, was how quickly you teach yourself how to learn things very quickly, and at a very high volume.
and
We also had some, just like any company in their first year, we also had some pretty big mistakes as well that you don't realize are mistakes
that was my
when
next question.
one. We had some pretty big mistakes as well. One of our biggest mistakes, which they're great people, so if they hear this, don't take this wrong. But one of our biggest mistakes was not really screening when we hired at the beginning. So when we first jumped in, we were like, okay, perfect. Like, as many salespeople as we can get. We'll teach them on the fly. We're good enough to teach them on the fly. Like, we're growing this thing as fast as we can, that whole thing. So when we didn't really actively recruit, because we were worried about, trying to get everything, trying to finish our to-do list that seemingly never gets finished.
Uh,
So when people would come to us just through the industry, and they would find us and want to work from us, we kind of just took everyone that was willing to hop on board with us, just because we were ignorant. We thought we could teach them as well as we learned, and as quick as we learned, but it doesn't really work out like that. So we didn't really screen anyone. We weren't particular about the people that we let wear our company stuff. And so what that ended up being was a lot of time, honestly, that we had to dedicate, that ended up not really seeing a return on. So that was one of our biggest mistakes in year one, was spending a lot of time with people that didn't really have a return on investment. So that leads us into this year. One of our main goals is to intentionally stay small until we can set up the training curriculum and set up this and set up that, so that when we do flip the switch and turn recruiting on and try to bring all of those people in, that it won't be the same the next time. We learned our lesson there. So and you always hear it. I mean, Hormozy talks about it a lot as well. But hiring talented people is key. So
And how did you come to this realization that we are messing up here and we need to fix that?
Gus and I were talking. We were going over stuff with our bookkeeper as we were approaching winter and as we were approaching Q4. So we got through like a big rush through the storm. We were trying to close out a lot of jobs, and we just kind of sat and we're going over the numbers, and we were like, man, we had of course the employees were sales reps, and so we were sitting and going through every job, and we realized that we did either Justin or I had a big hand in all of the jobs, whether there was a sales rep attached to them or not. And so we were like, hey, if we're putting in all this time and effort and they're still not being independent enough to provide, to perform on their own, then this is taking a lot of time from us. So maybe we should, we know how we can perform, you and I. So maybe we should take all the time we're spending on that and perform for ourselves until we can build the product, and then eventually when the time comes, then bring people on once the product is kind of already built.
Cool. And what I'm trying to get out of this conversation is one thing that someone who is already in your shoes and who is starting out can just learn from this conversation, because all these big guys who might listen to this conversation, they have all these things sorted out. So I want to frame this conversation for that one specific person who is in your shoes, who is exactly like in your situation, and who wants their things fixed as well. Or maybe we can just give them a single point or an advice or anything that they can stick to, and that might save them time, energy, or money. So what are the top 3 things that you feel someone should avoid, that where you messed up and you would advise them that these are the things you should not do when you are getting into roofing?
Yeah, 100%. And that's a solid question. I've thought about this stuff a lot. One of the first things is to lengthen your time horizon, hopping in, at least for ownership. So if you want to be an owner, but you also want to make, a lot of money for yourself and your family in the next 2-3 years, and have a lot of money liquid and go on vacations and stuff like that, it's not really realistic. It's not a heavy cash flow game at the very beginning. You're not super liquid at the very beginning. That's one of the things is kind of lengthen your time horizon. Like, we're trying to make an everlasting company. 15-20 years down the road, we're trying to be one of the top companies in Texas or the nation. That also took me a few months to get, because a lot of salesmen, this is pretty common in our industry, salesmen jumping into ownership. A lot of salesmen only see, and I'm guilty of this too. Our, my first company was transparent enough to let us see, costs of things on our job. So of course, me being in finance, I was adding and subtracting costs as fast as I could in my head, because I always kind of knew. It always seems like the company is making just all of this, these giant piles of money, but it's really not like that. A lot of the overhead and stuff really gets used. So it's not like you can jump into ownership and then go have a couple great years and then have all of this money. If that's kind of your goal, I would urge you to stay as just being a rep, and maybe try to climb that ladder, be a manager or something. Those are the guys who are liquid, and before years 5, those are the guys who make a decent living. That's one of the biggest things I would say, was lengthen your time horizon. If you want to build a business, build a giant business and build a long lasting business, and have that be your goal, so that when month 11 comes and you still haven't made any money personally on the year, you can still get up and go to work fired up, just like you were in the first 6 months, because you're trying to build a giant, giant successful company. You're not just trying to run and grab some cash. Secondly, I actually have it on my wall here because it's so important, is focus on one problem, give it all of your attention, and push it till it's resolved. Because your to-do list, it grows and grows and grows, and one of the weirdest thing about having a to-do list is as a business owner, is that you just can't finish it. It's different than having one that's just when you're in a regular job. But when you have a to-do list as a business owner, there's just not enough time in the day to finish all of them. Even if you were to set aside a whole week, you probably still couldn't get to all of them. That's one of the biggest things, is when you have a bunch of stuff on your plate, pick the
Yeah.
most important one and just go full force and attack it until it's fixed, and then move on to the next one and move on to the next one. And sometimes that
Okay.
means ignoring some emails or
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But it's sometimes it needs to be done for sure.
And what's the third thing?
You're right, man. That was just two. The third thing, I would say, just one of the biggest things that's helped us so incredibly much is just
Yeah.
legitimately trying to have the goal that
Yeah.
every client is going to think of roofing differently after they get done with your company. Like that's one of the things we do is every client we take on
Yeah.
when they stop being a client of ours, when their job is done,
Yeah.
we want them to think like, I didn't even know a roofing company could do that sort of stuff for just a roofing client. You know what I mean? Or I didn't know that all of that I was going to get all of that
Yeah.
just from you know having my roof redone. I didn't know that they could communicate like that. Like most
Yeah.
companies, from what I hear, most companies don't. Most companies don't do this, from what I hear, but they just did it. What I'm trying to say is, what we try to do is completely overwhelm each client that comes into our
Yeah.
to our process and then out of our process with um, the service that we provide.
Okay. And what do you feel now when you are going to bed? Like, what are the feelings that you have when you are in there? And is it satisfaction or is it just the encouragement or just the push to do more?
Yeah, I feel most of the time when I'm trying to really think about what's going on,
Yeah.
I think that each day I worked is just, I think of it more of a linear timeline, which a lot of people would frown upon. It's just kind of what works for me.
Yeah.
I think of like every single day I went to bed, I inched
Yeah.
it just a little bit closer to that perfect business that I was telling you about earlier. So if I did anything during the day, even if it was just daily stuff, I'm like, okay, we're one day closer to building this perfect business that I'm after. So that's really just the gratitude that I'm here and have my own company. That's one thing. Then the second thing was just the confidence in knowing that if I work today,
Yeah.
that I move the needle just a little bit further forward and a little bit further forward. And I like to think of it as linear because it says that, like, you can move forward instead of it just being omniscient. So every day I feel like, one step forward was the goal.
And every industry have their own support system, I would say. And in roofing, we have these conferences, we have these expos, we have all these things and seminars. Everyone is kind of doing that. And I think you are the best person to ask this question. Like, how do you see the support system in this roofing industry, like the big players and all these things? Like, do you feel that all these things that are there are actually helping guys like you in building their businesses?
Yeah, I think I have mixed feelings about this, and the reason being is because my support system, like my direct support system, the people that
Yeah.
I've met and maybe worked alongside in my last company, or people that I've just met through the network,
Yeah.
is unbelievable. Like these guys, I still call project managers from another company to ask them like what to do sometimes because they
Yeah.
have the experience and I know they have the expertise or
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But it's funny, across the board though, like on some of these, either some of these Facebook forums or just in the field or some stuff like that. It's kind
Yeah.
of a tense industry, to be honest. Like people think, and I'm not sure why I try to be like the guy that everyone can talk to, everyone knows. Like I follow people from other companies, and I tell them,
Yeah.
great job whenever they do
Yeah.
some good big roofs or something like that
Yeah.
all the time. I kind of try to be the guy that's like, because I've never understood at that it's, I've always heard it's not an abundance mindset if you're trying to tear other people down. I do
Yeah.
understand that there's some bad apples in
Yeah.
the industry,
Yeah.
but I feel like across the board, most companies probably do it the correct way, or at least what they think is the correct way. But when you talk to some people, it's kind of tense sometimes, and it's just funny. Like why I never understood why you would be tense with each other, because if you look at parallel industries like solar, for instance, those guys are always collaborating and they do
Yes.
large collaborations and they're always together and they're on trips with each other from different companies and stuff, and it's funny. It's not like that in the roofing industry for whatever reason. Everyone thinks they do it the right way, and other people do it the wrong way.
Yes. And every Facebook group or every post, like even if you would post your greatest roof, there would be 50 comments there and they would tell you you
Mm.
could have done this way, you could have done this that way. And that's strange. I agree with you on that. My second last question to you is that, okay, I just forgot that.
It's okay. You're right about the Facebook group though. Like
Yeah.
being a new business owner, and of course breaking off from a salesman to a business owner, like I said, that's kind of, it's so common in the industry that people kind of look down on it, or at least it seems like people kind of look down on it. So, and they look down on new roofing companies popping up because a lot of them aren't aiming at the 20-year, build a big company. They're aiming at a cash grab, at least from what I've heard. So it is weird. Like it kind of, for people in my position, it kind of keeps you from reaching out as much as I would if the industry was super welcoming and there was always people like here to answer your questions and stuff like that. So like, in essence, it kind of hurts the industry a little bit to have that sort of tension, because you get new people who are truly trying to learn and truly trying to build a big, roofing company that does things the right way. And I'm probably not going to reach out in the middle of those groups and put myself out there to get all of those crazy comments. So it's just a funny little dynamic.
And you know what? It makes you lose your confidence, I say, because when you are young, and even if you are posting something, they are all ready to bash you and just to put you down. And that I feel that everyone wants to look good on social media, like I am the supportive guy, I am there to help you, I am doing this. But in real life, it's not like that. That's the kind of impression I get out of this. Maybe there are people who would comment under this video that it's not like that, but that's my approach about this. Like people want to look good, like you just said, that there are in solar industry, people are going on trips together and they are all these things. But in roofing, they just want to have these conferences where they collaborate, they make videos, and they hang out. But as soon as they leave that conference, it's that competition again, like I have to put you down.
Right. It is it's pretty like dog eat dog out there for real. And especially in Dallas Fort Worth, because I mean,
Yeah.
we have so many companies and we get all the bad weather, or a lot of,
Yeah.
so many hailstorms and a lot of the bad weather that um it is easy to kind of throw a roofing company together. There's no license in Texas, so we like to make the
Yeah.
joke to homeowners sometimes you can be a landscaper one day and then a
Yeah.
roofing company the next day, if hail hits that night. And it's true. That's the scary part about it. But I can understand how it can some of the longtime players, it can make them tense about, talking to some of the younger guys. There are younger guys out there that are trying to build things the right way and do it the right way and get started as soon as possible. That's why we broke off after just a couple years of being a salesman, because I didn't want to waste years not starting. So there are people that way, but it is a funny little dynamic. It's weird. You really have to put yourself out there to reach out and ask for info nowadays in any sort of situation, or try and work your network until you can find the right person to talk to.
Yeah, and I feel that you are on the right way. So my actually, I remembered my second last question. Most
Nice.
guys in your age and in my age, they are this energetic and not energetic. I would say they are in this hustle mode 24/7. Like they want to go to the gym, they want to have this big biceps, shoulders, and abs, and then they want to be in the grind culture. But when I'm talking to you, your energy is so calm and relaxed, and I'm just feeling good in your energy. Where does that calmness come from?
I don't know. I've always been pretty laid back, but
Uh,
I struggle with that stuff. Like I struggle with consistency, I'd say. Not like consistently showing up or consistently working and stuff like that, but there'll be times where I'm like, full blown hustling out there all the time, and then what I realized early on, there's full blown where I'm like full tilt, full time, and then I would get tired of it and I would kind of check out, and it would show in my sales numbers because they would start doing this, because I would be full tilt, and then I would be like, all right, and now it kind of, and so what I've learned is to just kind of take an approach that's way more focused on just input and consistent input, rather than trying to work on any outcome at all. So like, it sounds weird to say, but we don't even have any really set goals for this year, like set revenue goals or set anything goals, because all of my focus is on the front end, and say, hey, if I can just, like you're saying, calmly and correctly put consistent inputs in, the goals will be what they are, and then I'll make adjustments, and then the next year I'll calmly put the correct inputs in as well. So I guess that's where the calmness comes from, is that I'm not just full blown, full blast, full tilt all the time anymore, because it doesn't work well for me. It might work well for other people. I'm assuming it does. The calm, consistent inputs is what works well for me. Um, it keeps the anxiety and stress away as well. You've heard some people's tactic. I was just talking to Justin about this because this is how he operates, and it's funny how each person is so unique in what really drives them and what how mentally like what keeps him in the game and consistently producing. He's a big goal guy, so he'll set even what he did this when he was just a project manager as well. Like he'll set a goal and then he'll break it down to like month by month. This is what I need this month and this, and then if I fall behind, like I need to get out there and that didn't really work for me. It just causes a lot of, as soon as I fall behind like one little step in it, it feels like a lot of pressure and this and that, which most of the time pressure is good, but it was the wrong kind of pressure. It just felt like I was behind all the time. So what works for me is I focus on consistent inputs, and I just focus on the inputs, and I know that if I do it correctly and I just consistently put inputs, then the goals I'm after will hopefully I'll meet and exceed all of those goals, which has worked for me, so far. So that's kind of how I operate. But I feel like everyone's unique, and part of really being successful in this industry, at least on the project manager side, is really figuring out yourself and figuring out like what are you a goal guy, like what works for you. Are you someone that sets a goal and it's like wakes up every morning and stares at it and goes after it? Or are you someone that doesn't work as well for? So
Cool. And you know what? I am that kind of guy as well. Like, I believe that it's 90% mindset and 10% plan. And I read a book by Robin Sharma, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And in that book, there is an event that a spiritual grandmaster is walking down the road, and a kid pops up and he asks, like, how long does it take to reach for you to reach at the top of that mountain? And that monk or grandmaster replies that it takes, like, let's just say 50 minutes. And the kid asks, like, if I run twice the speed of you what you are walking, how would it take me then? The monk replied, it would take you double the time. It would take you 100 minutes. And the kid replied, if I 3x your speed, the monk replied, it would take 150 minutes. So the kid asked, why would it take more time when I am going at a faster pace than you? The monk replied to this, is because I have both of my eyes on the very next step, and you will have both of one of your eye on the next step and one of your eye on the goal. So you will never be able to reach that in time. However, I will have both eyes on the very next step that I have to take. And that was a mind changing approach for me. And that's what I feel, that 90% is mindset and it's 10% the plan. My last question to you is, what's the one thing for which you would trade everything that you have?
the one thing that I would trade everything that I have.
Yeah, for which you would trade everything that you have right now.
I don't know. I'm assuming this is business wise because
No,
it's
this
not a lot
is
of stuff. Okay.
personal and like anything. Like
In
for
general.
me, yeah, if I have my grandmother, or like most people say that if I have one moment with my parents or anything like that, I would trade everything for that.
Oh, okay. I
Hmm.
see. Yeah, I would have to agree. I think my grandmother would be top one. Probably one more day at this is funny, but she really loved Chinese buffets. So I don't know why. Every time I was with her when I was growing up, we went to lunch at a Chinese buffet. So probably one more trip to the Chinese buffet with her. That would be number one for sure.
Okay. Yeah, at times I feel that there are things that we desire and we are ready to trade everything for that, but that's how just
Absolutely.
it was great having you on the show, Dylan. And any signing off notes or advice that you have for the audience?
It would probably be what we talked about last. Is definitely focus on inputs and
Mm,
not so much outputs. Focus on what you do every day. Stick to a
mm,
schedule. Just
mm.
consistently put quality inputs, and success is almost certain.
Thank you so much for your time, Dylan. Have a great day. And
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me
I
on.
wish you a huge success for your company as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and you as
Thank you.
well.
Thank you. Bye bye.